Okie dokie. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it, and for taking the time to let me share, what's a pretty deep passion for me. I sort of took this class and took a bunch of content that I already had, and that really impacted me over my career. And I've really become a de facto advisor for many of my clients, and I think it's a great way of doing business. It's not for everyone. And it really does begin with you. And so I'm calling it fiscal literacy for loan officers, because I think we need to learn stuff ourselves first. But once you master it, once you understand it, I think it gives you a great way to differentiate kind of amongst your clients. And I really do feel that all of us in the mortgage industry are really blessed to serve our clients, right? We get to be in a very special place with people when they're making this decision around housing and their homes and families. So, over my 33 years in the business, I've helped over 2,000 families, and less than 15% of those actually had an advisor before they came to me. Now, that's changing now because we're working more and more with financial planners and financial advisors. But through those people, we found $150 million in cash and cash flow. And very early on, I realized that this was a terrific way of impacting people in a very positive way, right? And so we've improved their lives, we've increased their net worth, we've created financial security and financial freedom, and it's really life-changing for many, many people, as you can imagine. And it's very fulfilling, I think, for those of us that kind of understand how to get it. But at the end of the day, what we're really here is kind of having a conversation. So I'm going to share some stuff here. I'm going to ask for maybe some feedback from those of you that are here. If you're listening on the recording, then you just kind of play it back in your head, and that's great. And I'll tell you that, in reality, I am certainly no expert at all. I've worked really hard to learn this stuff. It really started back in 2004 and 2005 when I started going to some events and learning from some kind of other people. And so you learn stuff, you forget it, you learn stuff, you forget it, then you're reminded. And, I'm a slow learner. I have to hear things multiple times, and maybe some of you are as well. But I don't tell people that I'm a lender. I don't do loans, right? I really feel like I'm an advisor. I help people make good financial decisions. So I don't call myself a loan officer. I don't call myself an originator. I don't say I'm a lender. I call myself a liability advisor, right? And so what my role really is to do is to show my clients and partners how to create financial security and freedom from the liability side of the balance sheet, right? So I start telling people that, and they go, "What's a liability advisor? Now, how do you help me from the liability side of the balance sheet?" Because they've never heard that before. So it is a big differentiator. So just start telling people that, and you'll see kind of what happens. Some interesting kind of quick stats. You've probably seen many of these things in the past, and the numbers change all the time. But, we know that we're in trouble kind of on a macro level in the US, right? So they've got 333 million people, 129 million households. A lot of them are not saving for retirement. 43% of them are not really saving very well for retirement. A study showed in 21 that people between the ages of 55 and 64, many of those people, 54% of them, had less than $100,000 saved for retirement. 58% of families are not saving for college, are saving for college, while 42% are not. 59% of American adults report living paycheck to paycheck, or in the case of us in the mortgage world now, we're less than paycheck to paycheck, but that's okay. There's great opportunities coming. I firmly believe that. And I think some of it will have to do around these kinds of conversations that hopefully you'll be having. And we know the credit card balances are going up, right? These kind of things. And you're going to discover when you start having deeper conversations with your clients, a huge gap for people is wills and trusts. It's a wonderful opportunity, as a liability advisor, or we'll call it an LO since we're all LOs here. To be able to help people and understand that if they don't have a will and trust, you have an outbound referral to an estate planner and those kind of people. The savings rate has never been great in the US. We're not a really good country in terms of savers. We're great at spending, but not great at saving. So it's been pretty low, but actually recently it was as high as 7.7%. Now that's dissipating now as we're heading maybe into a kind of a weird, economic time, maybe a recession or something like that pretty soon here. So I'm going to teach you one of the first things that I learned, and I heard it. I was in Cabo at an event by a guy named Stephen Marshall. Some of you may have heard of Stephen Marshall, but he had a guy on stage by the name of Jim McQuaig. And Jim McQuaig got up there. He had no PowerPoint, no nothing. And he stood up there, he had a yellow pad. And this was so impactful to me, the way he did it. And he goes, look, you guys, the conversation I have with every client that comes into my office is this conversation. And it's sometimes at the beginning, sometimes in the middle, wherever it is, didn't matter. But he goes, I go through the 4 steps of financial freedom. And he literally showed it on a yellow pad how he wrote it out. And these were the 4 steps. You know the 4 steps already. It's intuitive. But if you make it intentional, you start to share with people, it's going to change your life and change their life. So anyway, so these are the 4 steps. So step number 1 is really you have to establish a cash cushion, right? So we all know we need cash to live. And you sort of need to deal with those kind of things. But when you're talking to a client or a prospect, and you start to talk about these things in the context of buying a home or closing on a refinance or whatever you're helping them to do, number 1 is a cash cushion, right? And why do we need that cash cushion? You know, emergencies, car problems, just the surprises that kind of happen kind of over life. And so you move then to the second step of that, and that's really to eliminate non-preferred debt. Again, nothing's going to surprise you here that you're going to hear today. But if you kind of think how to present it to other people, it's going to make a big difference, right? So you eliminate non-preferred debt, things like credit cards, student loans, installment debt, maybe cars, unless they're, 0% interest rates, those types of things. I know you're all good at helping people analyze if they're going to qualify for a new home. Should we pay off that car? It's better to maybe put that money into the mortgage. Those kinds of conversations happen all the time. But from a financial freedom standpoint, cash cushion first, eliminate non-preferred debt, number 2. And then you start to build liquidity. And the numbers vary here. Some people say you need to have 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. I kind of like between 6 and 12 months, at least initially. And the reason you're trying to build up liquidity is the same kind of thing. Job loss, a slowdown in the mortgage business, investment opportunities, financial safety, college retirement, right? You can't borrow for retirement, right? You're going to start to build liquidity as part of your foundation for creating financial security and financial freedom, right? And of course, as you build, then now you build up sort of massive liquidity over time. So step number 4 is that if you build sort of massive liquidity, now you have the choice. Let's just say you have a $400,000 mortgage and you've got $400,000 in the bank in investments or savings or wherever it might be. You really have reached what we kind of call the decision point where you can pay off your mortgage or keep the mortgage. And that becomes a financial decision at that point, right? Is it better to keep the cash? Is it better to get rid of the payment? And we're not going to deal with that in this class, but those are the kind of conversations that are so powerful to have with clients when they see that. So step number 4 is, do you pay off your mortgage or not, right? So do you get to that freedom point? But before you make that decision, have you fully funded retirement? Is your debt level appropriate for your income?
Fuck is this shit?
Hello? Let me see, can I put people on, let's see, where do we go? How do we put people on, anyway, if you can mute yourself, if you don't mind, that'd be great. Thank you. All right, and so then you've gone through there, and as we get to you've gotten to that freedom point, now you can make a decision also maybe fund your life dreams. Is it early retirement? Is it vacation homes, second career, travel, charity and legacy? Those sorts of things to kind of think about from a financial freedom standpoint. Right. And so true freedom, really, at the ultimate time, and the way we teach it is that when your passive income from your investments exceeds the cash flow needed for your ideal lifestyle. Right. So think about this again. This is, I'm teaching you guys to think about it in your own world before you can start to think about it in your client's world as well. So when passive income exceeds the cash flow needed for an ideal lifestyle. All right, so I'm going to jump into what we now call the PinFin, and I'm going to bring this in here. So the PinFin is a tool we use. You're going to all get it. I'm going to put it up here, a link in a moment in the chat, and you're going to download this spreadsheet. And so it's a personal freedom number, and it's a financial freedom number. So once you're building liquidity, now you get to help them. Sorry, people are still jumping in the meeting here. You get to help them with liability advice. You're building liquidity, and now you have this, client with a lot of liquidity, and now you want to help them with liability advice. We all know that real estate is a wealth creator if managed correctly. All of us out here that are not in that 1% of wealth, most people create wealth through real estate, but it's got to be managed correctly. Leverage, what we do for a living, is what makes it all work, and that's what we get to do, and that's why it's so fun and so powerful. So explaining and teaching people how to create understanding, explaining and teaching to create understanding is how you're going to make a really big difference. So let me bring the PinFin worksheet in here and give you the link here real quick. Hang on a quick sec.
Recording in progress.
Oh, there we go. All right. Now I got everyone muted. Okay. So the pin fin, let me put this in the chat. Bear with me a quick moment. Let's close this. Where did my chat go? I'm going to come out of share for a moment. Chat, here we go. All right. So here's a link to what we call our pin fin worksheet. I'm going to bring it into the screen here and show it to you. And just explain the basics, because this essentially is going to become homework for you guys to do on your own after this class. So the pin fin, and you can use this with clients once you kind of become familiar with it. You can have it, it's your tool. We've developed it through a nonprofit I work with. And so over here, when you go through money, this is not a budgeting tool. This is not a way to create a financial plan. It's simply a way to kind of understand the money that's in your life. And so you simply start with the money you earn, salary, income, those kinds of things. It's set up here for two partners. And it flows down and all the income kind of comes down here. And then you show how many years you've worked and your cumulative lifetime income. And this is all about money awareness in your life. The next tab across goes into kind of expenses. So this is, again, not a budget, but it is just cash flow, so you understand where cash flow goes. And I think this is a terrific tool. And it's set up in two ways. It's your cash flow today, and it's your cash flow tomorrow, right? So you can kind of do it for retirement or whatever tomorrow means to you, but you kind of go through here and now you kind of create a monthly outgoing cash flow you're spending, and it shows you if you have a shortfall or a surplus. Then it brings into net. Now you're putting all your assets. This is all on one sheet. So it kind of brings everything together in one area and kind of who the money you owe and all the rest of it. And the cool thing is when you get to the final sheet over here, it kind of brings it all together. It tells you, kind of you see your entire financial picture in one kind of sheet, all your assets, your total net worth, your income, your cash flow, how much positive cash flow you have. It'll tell you how many months worth of cash you have left over based on your assets and so forth. And then the final tab kind of brings you into your financial independence number. If you've done it all correctly, it's going to tell you how much you need to continue to save to reach or invest to reach that financial freedom point, right? So don't get overwhelmed. We're not going to I could do an entire class on this. And in fact, we have a recorded class on the entire thing, but it's for you to learn, kind of play with. I'm going to have a class again in 2 weeks. I would encourage you to maybe spend some time playing around with this before we all meet again, because it's going to help you in your personal life and can help kind of your clients from there. All right. So again, we're starting with you. The more you understand, then the better you can help your clients. All right. So, and one of the questions we ask is, what are your lifetime earnings, right? So as our lifespan has increased over time, our earnings necessarily need to keep up. If you're only living to 25 or 30 years old, you don't need to have a ton of lifetime earnings. But if we're starting to live in our 80s, 90s, and probably very soon into our hundreds, the money conversation becomes more and more important over time. Right. So, and think about this, and this is not meant to be a negative thing. It's meant to be sort of an awareness tool. So you've been working, let's just say you've been working for 45 years, your average income over that 45 years was $100,000. That's $4.5 million you're going to earn over your lifetime. And what do you have to show for it? What's it show up? How's it show up in your life? Do you have, your retirement fully funded? Do you have a couple $1 million of assets, those kinds of things? So you put a couple of kids through college. So these are powerful thoughts and powerful questions that you sort of examine in your own life and then help clients examine it in their lives. So we're going to move on to the buckets. We teach this 3-bucket process around money and cash flow. It's very, very simple. You'll understand it again intuitively. But once you do this, it relates back to the 4 steps to financial freedom. And you can share this with clients, right? If they ask you for this kind of advice, you've broken through the price advice barrier. And now they're starting to talk to you about things that are more important. You're impacting their life in a very positive way. So 3 buckets. So you got a green bucket, which is your 30 days, initial cash that you have in your life. Hang on a quick sec. There we go. And the green is where you kind of, if you manage this green bucket correctly, you're going to have lifetime wealth, or at least the ability to grow lifetime wealth over your life, for obvious. So let's just say, for argument's sake, your monthly expenses are $4,000. On one side. And then that means we get to move into the yellow bucket. The yellow bucket is your cash savings. You want to kind of build up at least 3 months worth of cash savings. That'd be $12,000. So how do we kind of get there? Right. So let's just say you earn $4,500 a month. We're kind of keeping very simple examples here. $2,250 on the 15th, $2,250 on the 30th. That money all flows into your green bucket, which is your cash account. Checkings, it's just checking. That's all it is, right? So theoretically, you've got $500 a month left over. What happens to the $500? Again, pretty simple. It flows into your yellow bucket until it hits $12,000. You don't get to play in the red bucket, the investing platform, until you've filled. The green bucket, again, is daily, monthly, weekly cash flow. Yellow bucket is where you're building your reserve, the second step of the financial freedom, and so forth. So that's, you can't, again, move into the red bucket until you've gotten into the $12,000. Once you got your $12,000 into your yellow bucket, that's cash savings, mutual fund, not mutual funds, but money market accounts that are out there that are paying 4.5% today or 5% in some cases. Now you get to move your $500 flowing over into your investing platform. Again, an entirely different class about investing and so forth, but that's where you start to move into mutual funds and stocks and real estate and all the other kind of fun stuff that we're all familiar with. So really, that's a very simple process you can teach a client about how they can grow wealth over time. So what do many people have a problem with, right? The problem with is this green bucket. They never get to move into the yellow and red because they don't have the $500 remaining left over, or what do they do with the $500? They spend it, right? So that's the challenge. So, as you help people understand that very simple concept, you're going to improve their lives as well. So we talk about our role as a liability advisor. My role, as I told you earlier, I call myself a liability advisor. And when I talk to financial professionals, I talk about this idea of liability management. So liability management, and they've never heard of liability management. They don't quite know what it is. They understand liability, they understand management, but they haven't heard those two terms together necessarily. So this chart talks to people. It shows what the entire wealth of the United States is. It's got the buckets there. You'll see the house at 35 trillion. You got cash, you got bonds, got equity. This changes. It was updated. It needs to be updated again, actually. But the concept is what's important here, right? So we have the house at 35 trillion and we've got the mortgage at 11 trillion. So what's the difference there? $24 trillion of house equity. That is pure wealth for people. It's larger than almost all the other buckets other than the equities, right? So the second largest portion of wealth in the United States is just the equity sitting on our homes. And who manages that equity? Realtors, lenders, financial advisors? Does anyone manage that liability? Homeowners manage it. That's the big question. What I'm positioning myself, and I have been positioning myself this for many, many years now with financial professional, is I'm going to help the homeowner, the consumer, manage the wealth that's inside their house. And that's how we help financial advisors with their clients, their prospects as well, by helping manage this liability side of the balance sheet. So we know that 41% of America's wealth is inside the house. A lot of their debt is not tax preferred. And 65% of Americans have more wealth in their house than all their other investments combined. So think about the clients you've been working with for years that you helped buy homes maybe many years ago, or you know them, or family, friends, church, social, whatever it might be. You look at their situation. For many, many people, they've got more equity inside their homes than their IRAs, their 401ks, and all their other assets combined. And we know this to be true. So if you position yourself as the person to help them with that, you're really creating a differentiation. All right. So the next kind of concept that I share with literally everyone that comes in or we talk to about a mortgage, we talk about cash flow. Of course, we're talking about cash flow because we're talking about payments. But what are 3 things you can do with your money? If you have found money in your world, you've done a refinance, you've paid off a car, maybe some credit cards, and you've freed up $500 in cash flow. Going back to our bucket, 3 buckets, right? We know what they should do with the $500, right? It needs to fill up that yellow bucket and then move into the green bucket. But we tell people there's only 3 things you can do with found money. They can spend it and buy more stuff. They can repay debt with it, or they can invest that money and save it and invest it. And all 3 of those things have a different financial outcome. And all those are fine. We're not making a judgment about anyone by doing this, but this is the foundation to linking back to them in their minds how you can help them. If you're telling them this awareness of spending, repaying, or investing, and each one has a different financial outcome that you can explain, you can tell them what the benefit is of repaying a mortgage or paying off other debt. You can show that with math and through software that we all have access to. Or is it better to invest the money long-term into retirement or other assets of real estate, education? What do they need to kind of take care of? And what's the financial outcome for that? If you can start to illustrate those things for clients, you become very, very important to them because now you're creating that financial freedom for time. So let me give you kind of a quick example here, and you're more than welcome to use any of this in your practice and in your business. Let's talk about opportunity cost, right? So this is kind of an easy example where you might use it in your business and in your practice is when people come to you and say, look, I've got 40% down and I want to put all that money down. I'm selling a home or I'm getting a gift from my grandparents or my parents, whatever else. And you know intuitively that they can qualify with maybe only 20% down. So now they're facing the decision, is it better to put down the 40% or the 20%? And I think that 95% of our industry is going to go, hey, put down the 40% because that's easier. We get that. That's what you want to do. So why even have the conversation about putting less money down? Well, opportunity cost is why you want to at least have the conversation. You're not going to tell them to do anything. You're just going to give them education. So here's opportunity cost. So let's just say you have a $400,000 cash and you can go out and buy a home somewhere in the United States for $400,000. So you could pay cash for that home and have no payment for your life. Or let's pretend you could get a $400,000 mortgage and maybe it's 5% and your interest payment on that is $1,660 a month, right? So you have this choice. And no one does it exactly like that. There's some in between. But just to teach the lesson around opportunity cost, on one hand, we got a $400,000 paid off, free and clear, paid cash for the home. On the other side, we have a fully leveraged $400,000 mortgage with a payment of $1,666 on just the interest portion. Okay, so what could you also do? Well, someone could say, well, you know what? I'm going to pay the $400,000 for the home because I know that I could have had a $1,600 interest-only payment, but I'm going to invest that money instead. And so if I actually invested that $1,666, I earned 5% over time. I'd have about $1.4 million in the bank in my investment later on, okay? The first question I always ask people is, would you actually invest that $1,666? We know that people have a hard time making recurring cash flow decisions, but if you make a one-time decision around an investment, you can do that, but the monthly ones are hard for people. So that's that choice over there. On the other hand, let's just say you took $400,000, you took the mortgage and you took $400,000, you invested the entire thing, again, earning the exact same 5%, that money now grows to $1.8 million over time, right? So those are the difference between those two choices. And what's that really mean from a cost difference? That opportunity cost of that decision was $403,000 over the lifetime that they had that house. But people don't make decisions that simply, but the decision between the 40% down payment, maybe 20% down payment might be $150,000, right? If you can show it over a 30-year period. So that's opportunity cost. It's just the choice between making a single one-time investment decision or monthly cash flow decisions. And those are big numbers and impactful for many families. I'm going to send you, when we're done, an ebook that we wrote. It's called The Tale of Two Tellers. This is a very simple parable, and it really talks about how many people view money. Right? So they'll walk into a bank, and even right now, they'll walk in the bank and the bank is saying, hey, we're offering a 6-month CD. It's paying 3.75% or whatever it might be, right? And so they go, that's so cool. I can put safe money. I go in there, I walk into the teller, I give them my money. I put my $80,000 in there, and that's great. Then 2 days later, they come back in and say, you know what? I kind of want to build an ADU on top of my garage, and I need about $80,000 to do that. Can I borrow money from you on a line of credit? And that line of credit might be 8%, or today might be 10 or 11%. But the bottom line is what's just happened, right? So now they've given the bank their money, and now they're borrowing it back from the bank, and that becomes a tale of two tellers. So the way that financial companies make all their money, every bank, every financial institution in the entire world makes money on this exact formula. It's arbitrage. They can borrow money inexpensively. They can get money from consumers inexpensively, and they can lend it back out at a higher rate. And that difference is what their profit level is, obviously. So we teach clients the idea that you can become your own bank. And so this parable and this tale of two tellers is that exact parable. And you can, again, illustrate it through kind of the story. So as we move through the conversations with the clients around the 4 steps to financial freedom and where your money can go and the 3 buckets and just the conversation around money, you naturally at some point it's going to end up in the conversation around investing and kind of this investing concept. And so we discussed the idea of there's really 3 components to every investment. And it doesn't matter if the investment is in soybean or real estate or gold or oil, whatever it's going to be. There's 3 things that everyone considers, whether they know it or not, they consider about an investment: is safety, liquidity, and a rate of return. And so here's a very quick kind of way you might look at that. So how do we compare investments? right? So let's look kind of at this little triangle over here and you see kind of the common things we all understand. So this liquidity line bottom over here, you have high liquidity around cash, low liquidity around a CD. A CD is tied up for some time period, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 5 years, whatever it may be. So it's tied up, you can't get to it. So that's liquidity. Safety, we know that cash is very safe. Things like futures and puts and calls of stocks have lower safety, right? There's higher risk over there. And what's the trade-off over here on return, right? So the CD on the lower left is low rate of return, but there might be a higher rate of return in bonds and mutual funds and stocks and futures, but you're taking higher risk, right? So there's lower safety, higher risk, less liquidity, and so forth. So everything in the entire investment world fits into this kind of bucket. And you kind of think about it. So when you're comparing things, are you willing to trade off safety or liquidity to get a higher rate of return? And then the big question is, when we're dealing with consumers in our world, as liability advisors or loan officers, is where does the house fit in this model? Is the equity in your house liquid? Is the equity in your house safe? What's the rate of return on the equity in your house? You just put down 40% on the home instead of 20%. That extra 20%, what's the rate of return on it? Is it safe? Is it liquid? Right? So fun conversations with clients, and you can kind of put your own spin on it from there. I did a class, I haven't done it recently, but for a while I did a class at my kids' high school. It was a fun class. We called it Money, Time, and Purpose. And the idea was to teach them some financial basics and the value of the time, the value of compounding interest and money over time. And this was the example we kind of used. And so it's very simple. You look over on the left-hand side, we have Ben. And Ben was an industrious college student and so forth. And he went out and he earned and saved $2,000 a year. And he started at age 19. And he invested that money at age 19 through age 26. So we had a series of kind of 7 years there. So we invested a total of it's actually $16,000 over that time period. And then he did nothing else. He went to work, he was working, and he didn't save any more money. His money grew, compounding. At age 65, he got $2.3 million. That's Ben. On the other side, we have Arthur. Arthur was not quite as industrious. He spent all his money. He went out a lot on the weekends and had food and all partied and all the stuff he did. But he got a job and he started saving at age 27. So he saved the same $2,000 and he started at age 27. He invested the same $2,000 every year until he got to the age of 65. What did he have at the end of that time period? Had $1.5 million. So starting early is really, really, really important, right? And so forth. So we teach that to the kids, and you can teach it to your class. And don't worry about it if you didn't know that when you were 19. I certainly didn't know at 19. I didn't learn until I was in my mid-30s, right? So what's the difference between those two? 2.288 and 1.5. So that's a huge difference for people, right? Just teaching that very, very simple concept of early investing and compounding interest. So the question becomes, where are you? Where are you in your financial life? And it doesn't matter where you are. We meet all our clients. We meet everyone you run into. You meet them where they are right now in life. The past does not matter. We can't change it. There's no going backwards. We can't even really control the future. We don't know what's going to happen. All we can control is today and the decisions we make today, right? But that's the question. So when I talk to financial advisors, financial professionals, I'm explaining all the things that we do and how we can help their clients. And this is kind of a fun cartoon. I retire on Friday. I haven't saved a dime. Here's your chance to become a legend. So this is where you can help your clients, because as funny as that cartoon might seem to you, you know it's real, right? That happens all the time. So all this stuff is simple, right? I don't think I told you anything that you didn't already kind of know or hadn't heard at some point in your adult life. It's not necessarily easy, just like the choice between kind of the apple and the donut there, right? And the reality is that no one really, in our world, in the mortgage world, we know that people really don't want a mortgage, right? That's the truth, right? They don't want a mortgage. They want the dirt. They want the house. They want to own that property. They don't really want to deal with the mortgage, but they have to, right? So most of us have to borrow. If you had cash, you have a choice between borrowing and not. But if you don't have all the cash, now you're forced into the borrowing decision. So how you manage that money over time is really, really important. And that's how we can make such a big impact. When we talk about financial professionals, I will tell you that financial professionals, you know this, do not like debt. They don't like what we do. They think that most mortgage people, are out there just selling debt. We're selling debt. We're getting people into debt and so forth. And so they think it's bad, right? And so they would prefer all their clients to have free and clear homes and give them all their money, invest their money. And so they don't like leverage. But the reality is we know that leverage makes a lot of this stuff kind of happen. And so once they understand that you understand that and you can help their clients, you start to break down that kind of barrier. And reality is with many of the advisors we work with, they know how powerful the work is we do. And they come to us with every client and say, what do you think about this client? What are they looking to do? And maybe give them kind of different ideas. But you got to kind of get through that at least first. So in the other example I kind of use at times with people is, you know, I can get you in $100,000 debt really, really quickly, but I can't get you to save $100,000. You know, people just don't show up and still have $100,000, but I can get them in debt very quickly. So how you manage that, I think we have a greater opportunity to impact people's ability to grow wealth over time because of the fact that we can help them understand how to more effectively and more efficiently repay their debt over time. So again, kind of going back to where we started, I don't do loans. I'm not a lender. I'm not a mortgage, I'm not a mortgage broker, right? I think we get paid to influence lives in a very powerful way. Because again, no one really wants the mortgage, but they have to get a mortgage. So if you help teach them how to kind of handle the financial side of it, the mortgage side of it, our job is to really eliminate fear, teach them stuff, and take care of our clients over time. We can have a huge, huge impact on their lives, and it can be a lot of fun for you. And the reality is there's just I believe, very, very few loan officers and mortgage folks in the world that really, really understand these concepts. And more importantly, they have heard it, may understand it, but maybe they don't know how to teach it and share it with their clients, which goes to being coachable, right? So I have a coach. I've had a coach my entire professional, within 4 or 5 years in the business, I had a coach. So I've always had a coach, and I believe that I'm coachable. My question to you is, do you have a coach? Are you coachable? And you're here, which is a great step, right? And I'm sure we all have some extra time these days. So you're probably taking lots of webinars, and I encourage you to keep kind of doing, that activity. I want to share with you some of the designations that are out there, and I think many of you maybe heard these things. I have the CRMP, Certified Reverse Mortgage Professional. I used to have the CMPS, I dropped it a few years ago, but a great curriculum that's out there for their CDLP, Certified Divorce Lending Professional. I'm about 1.5 years into that. Some really great content. I like it. CLA is a designation I've been involved with, which really started my educational learning process back in 2004. In fact, I actually teach that designation. And then CMA is a Certified Mortgage Advisor designation through Barry Habib. Again, some great content there. I don't think I get this question all the time. Do designations help you in your business? And yes, I've actually gotten leads from both CRMP, CLA, and CDLP, but that's not the reason to have them. I don't. It's the educational part of it. I think that's really important. I keep the designations behind my name, but in reality, it's the content and applying that content to your clients. I think is really important. I'm going to share this real quick. So I'm actually forming a small group, specifically here within mostly C2 LOs. We call it a hive. I work closely with a couple other LOs that are already here at C2. We have our own little hive, and all I'm calling it a hive is because a hive represents bees. Bees work together to find the honey, right? And so they all kind of work together to kind of create success. So I'm involved in a hive, and I'm going to create kind of a new one. If you have any interest in learning more about it, just reach out to me by email or phone call at some point, and I will teach you and talk to you more about kind of all that. So we're going to have a second follow-up class to this in 2 weeks. So on August 4th, you're all going to get an invitation to it, same kind of bat channel, same time. I'd love it if you come to that. We're going to go a little deeper into a few more concepts there. And there's no obligation, there's no charge for this kind of stuff. I love doing it. And if you want to learn more about, again, sort of my little hive I'm creating, just let me know. I'm going to leave you with this. So this is a free tool that you can have. I give this to all our clients. This is actually a business strategy that we're implementing right now in the second half of this year. But Saveology is a DIY, do-it-yourself financial planning tool. It's not meant to replace financial planners at all. It's simply a foundational tool, and we give this to clients. And we've only been using this for a few months. We don't have a ton of traction around it. But I've spent probably $15,000 over the years on financial plans with different financial planners, and takes time and effort. This tool takes you about 10 minutes, and it was just as good as any financial plan that was developed by a financial planner. It doesn't do investing, it's simply a plan. The software does not require anything other than a first name and an email address, and you can use your fake email address that where you want to send junk to. That's not a big deal. But feel free to check it out. It's savewithjohn.us. You'll see that URL down at the bottom, savewithjohn.us. Feel free to jump in and do whatever you want with it. Here's the QR code if you're interested in it. And again, it's a free tool. The only reason I have it is because I'm affiliated with a national nonprofit called the National Institute of Financial Education. And so because of that affiliation with them, I have access to this tool. Otherwise, it's a large tool that gets shared with big companies. It's an enterprise version that we have free access to, which is kind of cool. Right, so feel free to check it out. Again, I'm John Thompson, CLA, CRMP, CDLP. There's my phone number and email address. I'm going to bounce out. Oh, let's see. I have another link I'm going to give you here for a moment. Let me put this up here in the chat. Okay. All right, here's a tale of two tellers. I'm going to put in the chat here real quick. Again, I'm going to send this later on, so don't worry about it if you don't get the link right away. And I'll send these other ones later on. All right, so let me come out of the share. We have time for a few questions if anyone has questions. And again, I appreciate you taking the time to be here.
John, will you send out a copy of the recording?
I sure will. Thank you for asking, Heidi.
Yeah, this is great, but I definitely want to watch it again.
Good. No, thank you. And while it's not complicated, there is a lot there to kind of unpack, which is why sort of the whole why I'm involved in an ongoing Hive. We meet every 2 weeks, and there's about 8 of us, and we get together and quite frankly, we talk about the same stuff over and over again because we're slow learners. So
this is great. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Anyone else got a question? Hi, Gail. I'm happy you jumped on, Gail, by the way.
Hi, thank you. I was just about texting you to say thanks for including me.
You're welcome.
On your way tomorrow, so I don't know if I'll text you and see if you're around
I
town.
appreciate it. I'm actually heading to Camarillo for a family wedding tomorrow. Actually, I'm going this afternoon, but we'll be out that way. So, but anyway,
Okay. All right.
We'll get together soon, Gail.
Thanks.
All right, everyone, have a wonderful weekend. Any questions, thoughts, just email me, call me anytime, and I appreciate it. And I'll send a copy of the recording. I'll send the deck. I mean, I'm happy to share the deck. There's no secrets in there. No one asked, but I'll share. I'll send it along, and feel free to do with it what you will. And hope to see you all in 2 weeks. And hope the other 15 people that didn't show up will show up next time.
Don, thank you so much for your time, man, and for sharing with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, John.
Take it easy. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.